Hello, podheads. Welcome back to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. I am your host for today, Kate Carter,
And I'm Kylie Colwell.
and it's just us.
R.I.P. Holly.
Yep, she is no longer with us anymore. Just kidding. She's like in Washington, D.C. or something. I don't know. Work, work, work. So, for today's case, I do want to give a shout out. We've been gone for a hot minute. I don't need to explain shit to anybody. We got lives going on, but we've been gone for a hot minute, but we're back. And I do want to say, Kylie, I didn't even tell you this. While we were gone, I had four different people from different like areas and stuff tell me that in casual conversations that they were avid listeners
I love to hear it.
that I had no idea. So that being said, one of them came up to me and said that she was an avid listener because I was wearing my Over Dead Pod t-shirt. And she said, I want one of those. How do I get one of those? And so I'm here to say, we're going to get shit together, you guys, and we're going to sell some merch. It's going to be on our website. We'll post it. I don't know what we're doing yet. Definitely a shirt, maybe two if you want one. And then we'll just kind of go from there. So you can rep. We're definitely going to get more stickers because that was a big hit. So this is me just projecting it out that it into fruition. It is going to come. I promise.
We have designs. We just need to decide which one.
Yes. Lots of designs. So that being said, today's case, I do want to give a shout out. This case was presented to me by one of my coaches at my gym. Her name is Coach Rachel. Hi, Rachel. If you're listening, you are because you're an avid listener. She actually sent me this case and said, how have you not covered this? Okay, so Rach, this is for you. And I also just wanted to say the person's name in this case is Rachel. It is not the same one that I'm talking about. Okay. My coach Rachel is alive, doing well, living her best life. But shout out to you. Thank you for sending me this case. We love it when you guys do that. So let's just dig right in. There are certain places that just feel safe in a way that you don't even have to like consciously think about. And one of those places, which I know very, very well, is Jupiter, Florida. Especially if you're thinking about the way it was in the 1990s before everything like felt monitored and tracked and like, we had so much more technology now. Jupiter, which is where I used to live, is the kind of coastal town where life revolves around the water. People grow up going to the same beaches. We all went to the same parks. There's little inlets. It's a tiny town. And there's this shared understanding that it's a good place to raise your kids because nothing really happens there. Everybody boats. Teenagers hang out in groups all day. People coming and going without pretty much any concern. Snowbirds come in for the winter. And it creates this environment where independence is very normal and expected. And when you think about being a teenager in a place like that, especially at this time in the 90s, it's a completely different world than what we're used to now. There were no cell phones, no way to check in consistently, no way for parents to know exactly where you are every single second. And so there's like this level of trust that's built into everyday life. Kids would go out for the day, say where they were going, say when they would come back. And most of the time, that's exactly what happened, which is why this case is kind of unsettling because everything about it starts inside that kind of normal and then it turns completely dark. This is the case of Rachel Hurley. So I do want to say Jupiter, Florida. Woo woo. I can't believe I haven't heard of this case. I didn't even tell Cameron I was doing this case. But for listeners, if you don't know this, my husband was born and raised in Jupiter. We lived there for years. We live one town over now in a even smaller beach town, also where Kylie's aunt and uncle live. Kind of a weird, I don't know how that happened, but we are all very familiar with Jupiter, Florida.
It is weird for such a small town to have so many crazy cases.
Crazy. We don't have normal cases. If something happens in Jupiter, it's something crazy. It's a big thing. Like we don't have like your day-to-day just normal robber or something. I don't even know. Car crash. Well, we do have lots of car crashes, but
Shout out Tiger Woods.
you know what? Wasn't gonna say it. Anywho, okay. So Rachel Hurley was 14 years old at the time of this case, and everything about her life up until a particular day was exactly what you would expect for a girl in her age growing up with this kind of beachy environment. She was an eighth grader at a school called Tequesta Trace Middle School. And from everything people have always said about her, she was a pretty strong personality. It made her stand out. She wasn't like quiet or passive or a kid who just blended into the background. She definitely had her opinions. She had goals for herself. And one of the details, and this is exactly where I'm like, the type of girl that she was. One of the details that kind of stuck out to me is that she wanted to specifically be a fighter pilot at 14 years old and a female. So that kind of tells you a lot about her or who she was without needing a lot of descriptions. Needless to say, I probably would have been friends with her. She was athletic. She played softball. She had responsibilities. She had friends. And she was at that age where she was starting to become a little bit more independent from her family, but still very much a kid in school routines. She was an eighth grader. Her parents trusted her, and there was really no reason not to. There's nothing in this story whatsoever that suggests she's reckless or made dangerous choices. She was doing what kids do. She spent time with her friends, she was going out during the daytime, and she was living her best life. The story kind of makes it hard to process. And I will say, I know that I just talked about how I lived in Jupiter, Florida. Once I went over the story and the details, this is super like hitting home for me because I know exactly where all of this happened, what I'm about to talk about. And I go there all the time, like on a weekly basis. So very odd. I can't believe I've never heard this. So there's no warning sign that something's going to go wrong in Rachel's life until it does. On March 17th, 1990, starts out like a normal day, something you don't really think twice about, especially in South Florida, where the weather is pretty much good enough in March to spend the entire day outside. It's St. Patrick's Day, which doesn't really matter in this case, but it adds to that feeling of it being like a normal festive day. People are outside, social, relaxed, chilling in the sun. Rachel had been out boating earlier with some friends near the Jupiter Inlet, which is one of the most popular spots in the whole town. And if you've been there, it's busy, but in a way that feels safe because there's tons of people. Like it's not remote or anything. Boats, families, teenagers, groups, everyone's hanging out on the water, not isolated. It's not quiet. And that's part of why no one would have thought twice about her being there. At some point in the afternoon, the group on the boat docks, and Rachel is with her friends near one of the parks that connects to the inlet. Now, this park is called Carlin Park, Carlin. This is the park we constantly go to. And this is where the timeline starts to get narrowed down in a way that becomes incredibly important later. And that's because Rachel, when she gets to Carlin Park from the boat, she had somewhere she needed to be. She wasn't just wandering around that day with no plan. She actually had arranged to meet her mom at 3 p.m. at Carlin Park. And that's because she had responsibilities that afternoon involving her softball team. Rach and her mom are going to go meet up with her softball team to sell pancake breakfast tickets as a fundraiser. And from everything we know about Rachel, she wasn't just the kind of kid who was going to blow something off like that. And she was also never late, like ever. At some point, Rachel leaves her friends to head towards Carlin Park. Now, I can't actually remember if I wrote this down or not, but you have the inlet to the beach. Everybody like docks their boat there. Carlin Park is attached to it. And so Carlin Park's not like the whole town's not big. So Carlin Park's not big at all. When I say park, it is a beach. There's like one playground. It's not like this giant in a trail. It's not like a park that you would think of like in North Carolina or something. It's beach. And so at some point, Rachel leaves her friends to head towards Carlin Park, very short walk, because her friends needed to use the bathroom and Rachel didn't want to be late meeting up with her mom. So she just pieced out. Very normal, midday. And it's one of those decisions that feels so small in the moment, but it ends up becoming the most important moment in this entire case because there's nothing unusual about it. She's not going far at all. She's not going somewhere she doesn't know. She's just simply heading to meet up with her mom, which is less than a mile away. And she's in full daylight, like in front of people. Her friends stop briefly. She continues on and she's hurrying to make sure she gets there on time. And this is when everything changes because that short distance between where she was and where she was supposed to be, there's a gap where something happened and no one sees it clearly enough to stop it. There are a few possible paths that she could have taken to get to meeting up with her mom, including the beach itself or this wooded, and I say wooded with, what are these called, Kylie?
Air quotes.
Air quotes. Well, wooded, air quotes, like sarcastic, basically, because Jupiter isn't wooded, it's all palm trees. But Rachel could have taken the beach walk or the wooded path that connects the areas, which people use all the time, like they're biking, walking their dogs, and it wasn't not a safe like area. Like everything's visible, and it's one of those details that feels so normal. Kids took shortcuts. They moved between the areas without thinking about it. There was no reason that she believed whatever she was doing was going to put herself in danger. But somewhere between that space where she left her friends and she met up with her mom, Rachel disappears. Her mom, Andrea, is waiting at Carlin Park in the parking lot, giant parking lot. When Rachel's friends, Erin and Maddie, show up, those are the two girls that went to go use the bathroom. Mommy Andrea is there at the agreed time of 3 p.m., expecting Rachel to show up any minute, probably not thinking much of it. She assumes, okay, maybe she's running a few minutes late. She looks around, maybe checks the time, but there's really no immediate panic because there's no reason for there to be. But as more time passes, that feeling starts to shift a little bit. And it's going like Andrea's thinking, like, okay, she's late, to this is weird. Something's wrong. She's never not like this late. And once you hit that point, there's really no like going back to feeling normal. And her two friends, Rachel's two friends that showed up, are shocked to find mommy Andrea by herself because surely Rachel would have beat them to the park by now. She left before them. So Andrea starts looking for her, retracing the steps where Rachel should have been, checking the obvious places, asking around, trying to figure out what happened. It was such a short window of time, like a few minutes between where Rachel left her friends and where she was supposed to be. And when she can't find her, that's when everything kind of escalates. So Rachel is reported missing at 5 p.m. The response is immediate and massive. And because this is a 14-year-old girl who was last seen in a public area in daylight, in a place where she should have been safe. And fortunately, in our case, law enforcement doesn't treat this like a situation where she wandered off or lost track of time. From the beginning of this case, there is urgency, which we never hear. Hundreds, hundreds of deputies are involved in the search. I want to say I read about 200, along with 3 canine units, 8 mounted officers on horses, 1 helicopter, and 2 boats. And these are all from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and the Jupiter Police Department. Now, I love that I get to say this because I don't think I've ever said it before, but someone who lived in Jupiter for years, also my uncle-in-law, Cameron's uncle, so my uncle-in-law, was the head honcho for the Jupiter Police Department for years. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and the Jupiter Police Department, phenomenal. Like, I cannot say enough good things about the Sheriff's Department and Police Department in the county.
This might be a first in the history of Over My Dead Pod.
I don't think I've ever spoke those words before. Like, we are on camera, we are being recorded. I love this Sheriff's Department and I love the Jupiter Police Department. They are beyond phenomenal. I've never heard of them like fucking up or taking too long to respond to something. But I do want to say, I think it is this way because Jupiter does have a lot of famous people that live there, but is also such a tiny town that everything is urgency, if that makes sense. Like, if you have a 14-year-old girl that's gone missing, they're like, well, she can't be that far. Jupiter's a square. It's a tiny little square. We have to respond immediately. Or if it's a famous person, like we have a lot of famous golfers, obviously it's going to be an immediate reaction. Anyways, love them. If anybody from there is listening, you guys rock. So they're combing through the beach. They're combing through the wooded areas, the pass, anywhere she could have gone. And there is this growing tension as the hours pass without any sign of her. And the longer that goes on, the situation obviously shifts from like hopes of finding her to something else. So the same night, the search unfortunately takes a devastating turn, and Rachel, her 14-year-old body, is found at 8:15 p.m. in a wooded area near Carlin Park, not far at all from where she was supposed to be meeting with her mom. Rachel had been raped, but the cause of her death was later identified as asphyxiation. So she was strangled. She was covered in defense wounds as well, and her clothes were scattered nearby. Now, the proximity alone is horrifying because it honestly means she never made it that far at all. I think it was like zero point 0.7 miles of it was going to be zero point 0.7 miles for her to get from point A to point B, and she was found at like zero point 0.2 miles. So like she barely had walked. So just like that, when her body is found, the case shifts completely. It's no longer a search. This is a murder investigation. Now, investigators aren't just looking for this missing girl, they're trying to reconstruct a crime that happened in a very small window of time in a place that was midday light. It should have been filled with people, and somehow no one saw anything or heard. My biggest thing is no one heard anything. And that's one of the first things in this case that is so frustrating because it didn't happen in the middle of nowhere. Like we hear about girls going for runs all the time and are taken off the path that they're running in on a deserted lake. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that kind of, in the middle of nighttime with headphones in. And you're like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. Maybe don't do that. But this was 3 p.m. on a beach town. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Not an isolated road or an abandoned area. And the immediate focus becomes trying to figure out who was there, what they saw, like, did anyone notice anything out of place? So the next day, the police searched for miles of the woods and beach for any clues linking to what happened to Rachel, but nothing was found. And that's when the most important pieces of this early investigation comes in, because there are some witnesses from the local high school, shout out Jupiter High, Lavia, who reported seeing a man in the area around the time that Rachel would have been walking through. And they were able to remember this man because he came out of the woods a little disheveled looking, like he had been moving quickly or he had just been through something physical. And the detail that immediately stands out is because he didn't match the environment. He wasn't someone walking around the beach, like in beach clothes or hanging out in the park, chilling with kids. This looked like a dude who was out of place and people remembered him later on, which we know usually is a big deal. The frustrating part is that these kind of sightings are sometimes just a little out of reach. People remember enough to know that something was off, but not enough to give like a clear, distinctive identification. You get descriptions, they're pretty vague. You get timelines, they're not exact. And when you're dealing with something this serious, those gaps matter. Like the wooded areas near Carlin Park were home to homeless people. And so it was theorized that maybe one of the homeless people had something to do with this. And in Jupiter, in this area, when it rained at night or during the day, the homeless people would move out of the park and go to this like abandoned radar station nearby. And it just so happened the night of Rachel's murder, it did rain. So the police went to that radar station and interviewed. It ended up being over 50 homeless people who were known to frequent the area, but in the end, none of them were like able to assist. Investigators began working backwards, trying to narrow down exactly what path Rachel had taken and where the attack could have happened. Like, was the attack where her body was found? And that's where the geography of this area becomes important because you have these connected spaces. We have the inlet, the beach, Carlin Park, and the wooded paths that kind of cut in between them. And again, it's one of those details that feels so normal for the time. And kids use those paths, kids and adults use those paths constantly. They were shortcuts, they were very familiar, they were always crowded. And I wouldn't say it wasn't an unsafe option, but there was no immediate danger by taking those paths. In this case, those paths, though, might have created the exact opportunity for someone to wait for a girl like Rachel to come by. Because what investigators start to piece together is that Rachel didn't make it far before she was intercepted by someone. And the location of where her body was found suggests that whatever happened did happen quickly and happened so close to where her friends and her mom were waiting. So it kind of makes it feel like this might have been a targeted attack just because of the like how quick everything happened. But we unfortunately don't understand if it is or not. So, as tips start to come in, investigators began looking at potential suspects. And like most cases, especially ones that got attention this early on, there's a lot of suspects. People will start to report suspicious behavior. Individuals are questioned, and law enforcement has to sort through, what is credible and what isn't, which is definitely harder than it sounds because you're just following up on every tip possible, which we love when police departments do that. It takes one tip to change everything. So, a name that came up quite early on and multiple times is a guy named Billy Fagan. So, Billy was a 17-year-old local, but he had a criminal history, was kind of known to be violent, of sexual manners, and was known to be in the area of the time of Rachel's disappearance and murder. Weird enough, within the same week of Rachel's murder, Billy had been accused of 31 sex crimes, but for some reason, I don't know why, they were dropped. That being said, come today, 2026, he is a registered sex offender. So he went on to have a wonderful career in sexual assault and rape. And so when you hear that, your brain goes, okay, totally could be something, because that's usually how these cases go. There's someone with a record, he fits the general profile, seems capable of doing something like this, but suspicion, as we know, is not evidence, and we need evidence. And as much as the investigators looked at him, they were never able to actually connect him to Rachel's murder. And that kind of comes as a pattern in this case. So a few other names: Paul Simon, Bobby James Allen, and Todd Clayton Campbell, all convicted rapists who were considered for this crime, all fitting the general pattern and thoughts of what the person might have looked like. Claude Davis was kind of tangled into another case of a disappearing woman locally, so he was also considered, but DNA ended up testing, it ruled all of them out for one way or another. Now, there was a man named Douglas Gross, funny last name, and he was a man that was in prison for aggravated assault, kidnapping, and batter. Now, Douglas's blood, this is kind of odd, was a match to blood found on a shirt near Rachel's clothing. So apparently there was some, other than Rachel's clothing nearby, there was a shirt found and it had Douglas's blood on it. And an inmate in jail said Douglas had confessed to killing Rachel with a man, like one of his friends, named Frankie Washburn. But apparently the police gave this Frankie dude a lie detector test. And his blood had been tested, hair had been tested, and teeth impressions done. But they ended up being able to rule all of them out of Rachel's murder. So I can't tell you a case where right from the beginning, blood, hair, lie detector test, and teeth impressions were done. Like, we love you.
In the 90s, too.
In the 90s. In the 90s. In total, when I'm talking about DNA, 127 men were tested and no matches were found. So a reward of $15,000 in the 90s was put out for any information leading to the arrest of Rachel's murderer. An FBI profile was made saying the killer was most likely a white male in his 20s that was unemployed and probably came from a middle-class family, which, like, I would love to know how that came about, or just in general, when police or FBI does profiles, I'm gonna watch. There's got to be a documentary on it or some class or something. I want to know how profiles are made. Like, how did you figure out from no DNA, white male, 20s, unemployed, middle class family?
Have you ever seen the show Criminal Minds?
I don't think I have. It's scripted, right? I don't watch scripted shit.
It's scripted, but it's good.
Okay. As the years pass, yes, I said years, and the forensic technology advances, this case becomes one of those where hopes keep, you get your hopes up, but DNA evidence doesn't exist. So it's not just in a vague sense, but like there's actual DNA from the perpetrator. And you would think in theory that makes the case easy to solve. And for a while, it feels like it might get solved. They were able to develop a DNA profile. They start comparing it to other known offenders, people in databases, individuals who have been questioned in the case. And every time that this happened, there's this big moment of anticipation where they feel like they're finally going to get an answer, but then the match never comes and nothing's popped positive. And that's one of the most frustrating things I think about a case, and this one in general, is the person out there is responsible, but their DNA simply just isn't in a system in the way that we need it to be so that it can be connected. You can't help but think about what that means, because it suggests that whoever did this either hasn't been caught before or had their DNA put into a database, but that like now they got away with a horrible thing and haven't been caught. Not to tell you about the ending, but over the years, this case never truly went cold in ways that other cases do. It kind of just more so fades into the background. It's always stayed active. There's periodically updates. We have new technology now and new, like, renewed efforts to try to solve the case. Investigators have gone back and reinvestigated witnesses. They re examined evidence and they continue to follow up leads even decades later. And every time there is an update, there's this sense of like hope that this is the moment. We're gonna figure out who did it, who done did it. But so far it hasn't. And that creates this strange kind of tension as well, because it feels like it's one of those cases where everything's there. They have their location, the exact time of the day. It was, in a crowded place. There is DNA evidence, but yet we don't know who did it. Things just haven't come together in that sense. And then there's this part of the story that doesn't really get talked about enough. It's what happens when everything else is done. Because once the investigation slows down and once the media attention kind of starts to fade, the updates start happening less. The people connected to the case are still living with it, like her family, her friends. Cannot imagine being one of the friends that was on the boat with her that day, or her mom that was waiting to meet her. And you have less than a mile, 0.7 of a mile where all of this happened. Like, you think to yourself, like, could I have done something? She should have waited with us at the bathroom. Maybe we shouldn't have gone to the bathroom, like shit like that.
To think you were so close to where it happened and you
Oh my
didn't
God, so
see or hear
sad.
anything. Yeah.
I don't get the whole like no one heard anything kind of like. I could see you getting jump scared, taken out of a bush and silenced, but like not to the point where people don't hear you screaming. I don't
Mm,
know.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't get it. And it's not like it's tons of shade. Like, we have fucking palm trees, people. Like, we're not hiding behind giant redwood trees or something like that. It's not, I don't know. It's just weird. But for Rachel's family, this isn't something they don't get any closure. It's something that stays open as long as the case is open. Everything's unanswered and it continues to exist in their lives every single day. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of this case, too, is there's no resolution, there's no movement in it, and there's no clear ending that justice is ever going to be found. Instead, there's just this lingering question of like, who did it? And it's not going away. What makes this case stick isn't just the fact it's unsolved, although that is a huge part. It's everything about it. Like we just said, that it shouldn't have happened in the way that it did. A 14-year-old girl in the middle of the day on a holiday, out in a public place, walking less than a mile to meet her mom. And somehow, in that short amount of time, everything changed and no one saw it. That's what I just don't get that part, because it makes you kind of think about like, I go to Carlin all the time. We go to the inlet all the time, the beach, the Carlin Park. I walk with the kid, my baby's there. And you don't think about, I'm like reading and researching this story and I'm like, dude, I just don't get how no one saw or heard it. That's just like mind blowing to me. You would expect someone so physically like to have seen it or to think of something weird. And instead, because no one came forward saying they saw anything, it left investigators like with these incomplete moments of the day and small pieces that feel like they never connected. And when you sit with that, it almost feels worse than having no witnesses at all, because you're left knowing like the answer's out there somewhere. We just, maybe the person hasn't come forward saying they saw something or, heard something. There were reports from individuals who had been in and out of the wooded areas near Carlin that afternoon. And like I said earlier, people recalled seeing a man who kind of stood out, not because he did anything dramatic, but because he didn't fit physically the environment. He wasn't in beach clothes. He didn't look relaxed. He looked disheveled. Some people said that he had been coming out of the woods instead of going in it. I mean, I don't know what you're doing in the woods anyways, but it suggests that people did see something. We just don't have enough. Like, I always think about it too. In a case, like if I'm out and about in town and I see a sketchy car, I immediately try to memorize the license plate. But ask me 20 days later what that license plate number is. I can't tell you. I can't tell you at all. So what was the, like there's no, or I can't even, my biggest thing, which is an issue I have, I cannot tell you the type of car that someone's in. I do not know cars. I can't, like, if they're like, what color and make was the car? I was like, I don't even know what I drive half the time, like,
I can't even find my own car in the parking lot.
yeah, I don't even, yeah, I have to hit the button to find, it's like 4 floors down. I'm smacking the button. So I get it. Like you say, oh, this guy looks disheveled coming out of the woods. Don't know what he looked like though. When it's tied to something traumatic as well, it may not be a precise memory later on. Like 20 days later, I'm just making up the 20 days, but 20 days later, you're probably not going to remember the exact clothing that person was wearing. We remember like impressions and fragments, but not specific details. I keep coming back to this idea that someone did see him, maybe more than one person, but they didn't know what they were seeing at the time. And that's like a big thing. And in this area, Carlin Park and the beach, I'm trying to like picture it right now. I assume there are cameras now, but like I can't remember ever seeing cameras. And especially in the 90s, there definitely weren't cameras hanging around. So, when investigators began reconstructing the timeline in more details, one of the things that immediately stood out is just how small a window of time it was as well. And that kind of changes the way you understand what happened. Rachel left her friends, heading to meet her mom, and it's within a matter of minutes, like under 5 minutes, that someone takes her from a path. Things escalate quickly and violently, and she is raped. I can't tell you if that's before or after she got choked out to death, basically asphyxiation. When you think about it, you're not just looking for someone who happened to be there. You're potentially looking for somebody who had been there for a hot minute, trying to like not stalk, because I don't think she was stalked, but the person was looking, because we know it's a he, was looking for a perfect opportunity in person. So a creeper for sure. Now, as the investigation gained momentum in the first few days and weeks, there was this intense push to identify anyone who was there in general. And like most cases that received this kind of attention early on, multiple people came forward. But because a lot of these people that had their names thrown out in tips had criminal histories, they were immediately talked to, but everybody was ruled out, because everybody had their DNA in the database. We talked about Billy Fagan. That's someone, if you research this case, is going to come up a lot just because he was known for doing things of this manner. He doesn't have any he hasn't murdered anyone that's under his rap sheet, but pretty much everything else suggests he could have done it, and he was in the area at the same time, but there's nothing that connected him. One of the reasons this case continues to feel solvable even decades later is because there is physical evidence that was recovered. Rachel's clothes, she was found nude, but Rachel's clothes were nearby, kind of scattered all over the place, and there was DNA evidence on those clothes. I could not for the life of me figure out what kind of DNA evidence it was. I don't want to say like she was raped, so I don't want to say it was something that it wasn't, but enough to the fact where they have it in the system, and to this day it's still like it's being tested. And over the years, obviously technology has improved. Investigators have gone back again and again, testing, reanalyzing, sending it off to the FBI. Maybe something will come more visible now as technology is growing, and every time that happens, everyone's hopeful, but there's no progress, no match, no confirmation, no resolution. This case kind of pisses me off. I'm not like, not pissed. Yeah, it pisses me off because you have everything there. You have the timeline, you have the evidence, you have the body, you know how she died, you even have DNA, but we don't have a person. And you know how much I hate unsolved crimes.
It is wild to me for someone to commit this type of crime and so
Midday.
efficient. Yeah, and efficiently, and their DNA is not in the system
Right. You would think that this person 100% had prior.
or has done something since.
Right. And who knows? Maybe they have. They just haven't been caught.
Either they haven't been caught or maybe they're dead.
Maybe they died that day.
Hmm.
I hope they did. I hope they got hit by a boat.
Karma's a bitch.
Carmen's a bitch. So now, if you've listened to this whole story and something, anything that I've said seems familiar, feels familiar, even in the smallest way, that's the part that matters because cases like Rachel's are not solved by one big dramatic break. They're solved when someone finally says, like, wait a minute, I remember this, or I've heard something about that, even if it's insignificant. So if you have any information at all about what happened to Rachel Hurley on March 17th, 1990 in Jupiter, Florida, please call the Crime Stoppers of Palm Beach County. That number is 1-800-458-8477, and you can always remain anonymous. You can also contact the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, and that is 561-688-3000. That one piece of information, no matter how small it feels, could be the thing that finally gives Rachel and her family and her friends the answers that they've been waiting decades for. And that is the case of Rachel Hurley.
Frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's mind blowing because this whole case, I'm picturing it in my head. Like I know exactly where it took place. And it's stupid. It's stupid that no one helped her in the moment or heard her or saw her. It's stupid that she wasn't even walking a mile. It's all just stupid. I do really hope that someday the case will be solved. If you're really interested into it, there's a few Reddit forums on this. Of course, we love you, Reddit, and read through those dark holes because there's definitely theories about some of the guys that I had said. And like, so I didn't go really into them because they have been cleared from the case. So I don't want to bring it up more. But there are some things that you're like, how was it not this person? But yet the DNA, it was DNA. So
I wonder if they've gone the genealogy route yet.
I bet they have.
This mystery person just like also doesn't have any relatives. So it's just like popped up.
Just them. They've killed their whole family. Well, no. Yeah, I would still pop up actually. I don't know. But it sucks. It sucks and it's sad. And thank you to my friend, Rachel, for recommending this story, who once again is alive and well. Hi, Rach. You want to jump in overtime?
Let's do it.
Big news has come out since we've last recorded about our wonderful Gilgo Beach murders. What is it? His name's Rex, right?
Rex Huerman.
So, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because this is something that just pisses me off, and I wish there was a different system in doing this, but Rex pleaded guilty to 8.
I think 7, and then he confessed to an 8
Okay.
murder.
Under 10 murders for the Gilgo Beach murder case. I don't know what episode that is, but we've covered it a many a times here on Over My Dead Pod. So he confessed, pleaded guilty. He's off on his way to live out his life in prison. But what sucks and what pisses me off about these kind of things where the perpetrator just says, yes, I did it, is I want all the details.
Okay, I do have good news for you, and it's funny that we were just talking about it.
And I want a trial. Okay, go ahead.
Part of his plea deal is that he has to go talk to the behavioral analysis unit at the FBI, and they're going to study him.
No way. So we
Mhm.
will know.
If they release the files, which I hope they do.
I hope they do too.
Mhm.
Like I at least want a trial. That's what I wanted is I hate it when there's no trial. Like the Idaho murders. Give me a trial.
Yeah, you roped us in, and now you're not giving us any information.
No, it sucks. I don't, some people want people to rot in prison. Some people want the death penalty. A lot of the times, the criminals say and confess and are convicted and take a plea deal because they don't want to do the death penalty. Or maybe they can take years off their sentence. In these cases, they're usually life without the possibility of parole. So that usually means they were considering the death penalty. If I was a criminal and I did shit like this, and they were like, we're considering the death penalty, or you can take a plea deal to live your life out in prison, kill me.
Tomorrow.
Today. I'm not telling you shit about what I did, and I'm heading off and floating in my own world, and I'm not going to be on Earth. Oh my God. Euthanize me. All good to go. I personally do not believe in the like I don't believe in the death penalty because I want criminals to rot out in prison. But as a criminal, I'd be like, go ahead, put me down. I don't want to live every day in prison. That sucks. Especially if it's like a kiddie crime. They get killed in prison. So well, okay. I'll let the FBI handle Rex. Hopefully they'll let us know what they find about him because what a weird man. And whoever named him, not okay. But yeah, so we got that update while we've been in absence. Let's see what else. Tiger Woods crashed his car. He's fine, totally fine. Needs a driver, but he's good. And then there was something else.
You and I have both been obsessed with this new FLDS documentary on Netflix.
You guys. Okay, so like if any of you true crime lovers, we all know about FDLS. And there was the Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey or something like that on Netflix. I don't know. Is that the exact name? I kind of
Yeah.
butcher it sometimes. Okay. If you haven't seen that one came out a few years ago. Phenomenal. That's about Jeff Warren's being taken down and the head leader of the church, him and his creepy dad. He's creepy too, but they got taken down. Gives you a bunch of backgrounds on the FDLS church and the members. But there's a new Netflix documentary. It just came out. Dude, that's good shit. I loved it. What's the name of it?
Trust Me, the False Prophet.
So on Netflix, Trust Me, the False Prophet. And it's a new story that we've never heard of.
No. So this lady, she goes back to where the town where, Warren Jeffs left things. And she's like, I wonder what they're up to. It turns out there's a brand new Warren Jeffs.
Ow, I kept saying Jeff Warren's.
I think it's
Warren
Warren.
You know what? Because it should be the other way around. Yeah, there's a new dude who basically has decided to take over Warren Jeff's role. And much younger dude, totally autistic. Not that that matters, but 100%. I watched it with my mom. Anyways, you need to go. I don't even know if I want to talk about it that much because there's some twists and turns where you're like, what's going on? But new dude comes into town. He's got wives. He's got wives that have, my favorite part is he married some wives and then he also married those wives' daughters
And their sisters.
and their sisters.
He
It
took
was
everyone's wives.
he took all of his friends' wives.
My favorite part was at the beginning. Everyone was like, "No, Sam Bateman, like he's kind of like a loser. Like no one respects him." Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, "Oh, I'll show you guys. I'll take all of your wives."
And he did.
And he did.
And he did. My favorite was what was her name? The girl at the like one of his wives. That was like the main wives. That doesn't blink. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm.
Yep.
She doesn't blink. She's not so, but then it turns out she might not be not so.
I think some of them are on the mend, being unbrainwashed.
She's currently being unbrainwashed, but it's a crazy story. We've never heard about this one. He had 20 something plus wives or 30 something plus wives. He had children, wives. All of it's being documented by a couple who said, "Hey, we're coming here to document you guys for a documentary like about your lives and about Sam Bateman." And in turn, they were the entire time they were like, "No, we're working with the FBI. Like we're setting you guys up to like fail." And so you get firsthand live footage, which you don't often get to see. And it's a crazy story, and I highly recommend that you go and watch it on Netflix. I watched it with
It,
my mom, and she loved it.
I watched it with my dad. We finished it in one night.
Did you really? Oh my! It took us.
Oh,
I think it took us two nights, 2 or 3 nights.
I know. I was like, oh, I'm not going to bed. We have to finish this.
Dude, so good. And because it takes a few twists at the. You got to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a good one. So we'll let you guys know if we ever hear of really good episodes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there was one doc I was a little disappointed with. I think it was called like The Truth and Tragedy of Mariah Wilson.
Mm. Hmm.
And she was murdered by
I haven't watched it, but I didn't hear good things about it.
they left out so much.
Oh, that's stupid. Now, if I know a case and I watch a documentary about it, that's almost harder for me because I have in the back of my head, like, oh, they didn't talk about this, or oh, this wasn't shown. Sometimes you get new information, but a lot of the times I like to watch stuff that I've never heard of.
Hmm.
I just watched with my mom last night about, and it was the case from North Carolina where the wife and her dad brutally killed her husband. And he was an Irishman. That was
Yeah,
a really, yeah, that's on Netflix too.
that one was crazy.
Yeah. There's a lot of good ones. Netflix coming back, baby. Coming back.
I need
So,
more.
yes, listeners, if you have not just recommendations on stories we should do, but anything true crime, documentary related, we loves. That's what we do in our spare time. I give myself 2 hours every single night once the girls go to bed, and that's what I do. I watch true crime about people getting murdered, and I eat chocolate, and I apply to jobs on my phone. Oh, I'm getting laid off. That's a fun thing that's happening. I'm getting laid off from my wonderful job that I've had for years and years and years. And so I'm applying to new jobs. It's out in the open. My company knows I'm looking for other things, obviously. So if anybody has any jobs they want to send my way, it has to be remote. That's it. Let me know. I'm willing to do anything. Not anything, but close.
You guys, listeners, we have been going through it.
It's been a rough 2 weeks. We can't talk about a lot that's gone on, but it's been a rough 2 weeks for all three of us. I mean, Holly's not here, so she is alive, though. I shouldn't have joked about her being dead. She's just going through a lot. And then Kylie went through a shit show, and then I just have a life. So
Thoughts and prayers to us.
2026, rough start.
I'm dead serious about us like having a meeting with like a psychic or like an Etsy witch to like reverse whatever's been done to us.
I would do that.
Okay, we'll arrange that.
Okay, we'll do it on Zoom. An Etsy witch. All right. Well, with that, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. For more information about this case, you can check us out at overmydeadpod.com or on our social medias at Over My Dead Pod. We're on all the socials. If you would like to recommend any cases to us or give me a new job, that would be wonderful. Otherwise, we will see you next week for another case. Bye.
Bye.